Hey, everybody, welcome back to Explore Yoga Health. My guest today is Jyoti. She's been on the channel before. So if you want to see her other video and kind of take in some of her past experiences and all of that, then feel free to watch that one. It's about appreciation, and the link is below in the description. So how are you doing this morning, Jyoti?
Great. It's a great, beautiful spring day here.
So today you were going to talk to me about awe, which is kind of cool because you talked about
Hmm.
spring just now, and awe may have some connections to nature. I'm
Absolutely.
just curious what attracted you to the topic of awe.
Well, um, maybe we can talk first about a little bit about what awe, the definition that we're using of awe here is, and that is that feeling of being in the presence of something very vast. And it is so overwhelming that it transcends our understanding of how the world works or whatever. And then another definition is that it's an emotional response that overwhelms our current mental structure. And I find that anything that's transformative in life to be very fascinating. And that's one of the reasons why I'm attracted to and started teaching the practice that you and I both teach called the Art of Ascension, because it is so powerful and it's so easy to use, and it requires, because of awe, and awe is so much part of it, it requires us to reevaluate how we think life really works because we're having such powerful expanding experiences.
Yeah, it's fun for me when you sent over this topic because awe has been, just for me, it has been a little bit more on the spiritual. We'll talk about that later, but just going out into nature and being just my breath taken away by
Hmm.
like I remember being in the Pacific Northwest and walking around in the big pine forests, and how
Hmm.
one moment I felt like, oh, I can feel them breathing and I'm breathing in what they're breathing and they're breathing in what I'm breathing. And it was just, really, really uplifting. I felt amazing. So that is one of the things that, like, it changes our mental state, right? That's one of the things that the studies are showing, our mental and maybe
Hmm.
social
Hmm.
condition.
Absolutely. It's huge. And first of all, what it does at the physical level, because it's bringing in new, different chemicals. And one of those is oxytocin. And of course, we absolutely love oxytocin. Um, I mean, we look at the opposite right now where the chemical of Oxycontin now has created a crisis in our society because so many people, probably not creating enough oxytocin in their own body, are having to seek for it outside themselves and get addicted to it. Whereas we can create it in our own body, and our body loves it, and we love that experience of that. Some of the other, another really powerful experience of awe that is something they can't find any other way to overpower in our body is when that inflammation system starts getting out of hand with some people, as in chronic illnesses. And we know now that many of the chronic illnesses people experience, the inflammation is a huge part of it. And what drives that inflammation is something called cytokines, or cytokines, I believe is how it's pronounced. And there's no way to stop them. But when you have an experience of awe, they get back in line and get back in balance, because we do need them, but we just don't need them to get out of hand. And so that's another powerful physical experience of awe. But again, as we were talking about before, what it does to our mental structure is very powerful. And we find that people who experiences have more experiences of awe are much more creative. They're able to think outside the box and do things that are way outside the norm. And you think of people like Einstein or Muir or Darwin. They talk about their experiences of awe, and that's what drives them into these great creative experiences. Um, Another thing that it really is powerful in doing is that it takes us out of our little box of, I have my problems, I have my little life here, and it expands all of that, and it puts that into perspective. And we're able to then shift away from that getting stuck in those little um, defining experiences. And one of the most powerful things is because we often experience these self-defeating thoughts that we carry around with us and these little habits of these are my limitations. When we have an awe experience moments, it helps us to put that into perspective and we become much more skeptical of our own silly mental states
Mhm.
and helps us to become more grounded in reality of a bigger self.
That's
And
awesome.
that's the other powerful thing I love about it. Yeah.
That's awesome that you're talking about that, because the getting outside of yourself is an aspect that, as I was reviewing some of the material, is the part that allows for social connections. And it's one of the things that's going downhill in our current day and age. Like, people
Mhm.
don't want to be a part of organizations just
Mhm.
because there's so much struggle and so much fight, so many opinions, maybe.
Mhm.
But when we're experiencing awe, then that changes within the structure, correct? Something like that.
Very much so. When we're experiencing awe and we think about we have that oxytocin running through our nervous system, we want to be more cooperative with others. We want to give to others. Some of the research is showing that somebody over here is having this experience of awe, and then they have someone over in another close by area drop all their pencils. And the people who are experiencing awe are really they're wanting to go over and help that person pick up their pencils, and the other people, they can pick up their own pencils. So we become more cooperative and on a just a really natural uh, behavioral system. And I think that's part of the thing is we think about when we're in that fight flight syndrome, our body is producing chemicals that cause all problems to be magnified. If we think about the caveman who is having this experience of the saber-toothed tiger, he needs to have that ability to quickly identify any problem so that he can deal with it. And that's the state that we often are in most of the time. And you think about people who can't get along with other people, they're thinking they need to protect themselves. They need to, because every problem is being magnified by the chemicals in their nervous system. And with oxytocin, that kind of levels out that playing field and makes us realize, hey, we're all human. We all have these experiences. We're all similar in nature. And I can see that my friend over there is having the same experience I might have had yesterday. And oh, wow, isn't that maybe I can lend him a helping hand?
It's
Yeah.
so interesting, and I know we're not talking about it yet, but just listening to you talk about it, I can't help but think how much awe is connected to all the positive emotions. Like you said, if you're feeling better, it's just easier to appreciate, or
Mhm.
maybe even like the love experiences, you're naturally in a state of awe because of those positive emotions. But this is it's not really the same thing as those positive emotions. And sorry if I'm throwing you a curveball, you just really
No,
stimulated that
that's
in
really
me.
true. One of the things that they're doing in science is just trying to evaluate each one on their own. And the thing about awe is that it has its own facial expression. It has it also deepens your breathing and it impacts the vagal nerve. And those are the three physical characteristics they're using to identify awe as different from love or appreciation and that sort of thing on the physical level. So yeah, it is identified very separately from the other positive emotions, and each one of them have really positive, powerful effects in us.
That's cool. So one of the things in the literature, it was talking about awe and religion, and I just thought I'd pull that out because some people are not into religion and they're not going to be at any time. Do you have any thoughts that you want to share on that?
Well, yeah, I think historically they assumed that awe only had to do with God or religion. And it wasn't until the 1750s that some guy wrote a book and started talking about how, hey, awe is really out there. It's really it can be experienced in nature. It's experienced in music. It's experienced in art. It's experienced even, shall we say, in the art of nature, where we're looking at, the fractals and all the many things that happen on a natural law basis, and it becomes very awe-inspiring. Yeah,
Um,
so there's a lot of ways
Yeah,
to
funny that
experience
you were
awe.
saying that, because I was thinking about people that I know that love math, and then they're programmers, and they can get so like into what it is that they're doing and the solving of the challenges or the problems that the math is creating, and it has nothing to do with religious types of thinking. So
Exactly. They're just experiencing the beauty of the whole mathematical structure. Yeah, and it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
okay, so in connection with that, I've been doing this little thing on Facebook where I've just been sharing nature photos of different locations
Hmm.
around the entire world.
Hmm.
And it's funny because, on Facebook, what you focus on grows, and they just keep showing me more and more amazing pictures, and I just keep sharing them. What I thought was interesting about that was how some people like remarked or would even send me messages like, wow, this is so stimulating to me. And
They are.
all I can think of, some of them are a little bit more religious, the wonder of God, or it just makes me
Yeah.
feel good looking at these pictures. And yet others were really kind of annoyed with me. Like, why can't you just show pictures of somewhere that I could go down the road? Like, I don't want to see pictures all over the world because I'm never going to be able to go there. So some of that was their own, like mentality.
Self-limitations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
They are absolutely beautiful. I've been watching them come by and enjoying them as well. And they're just, I mean, the only problem I have with it is you don't always say where they are. And I'm like, wow, I want to know in case I ever get near that, I might be able to go see it.
Oh, that's funny. Well, most of them are shared, so they should have it there in the link of
Ah,
wherever it was that I shared it from.
ah,
But that whole experience kind of made me wonder, do people experience awe differently? Because a lot of the science was showing that if like nature is an easy go-to type of thing, but here we go.
mhm,
I have an example where it's not stimulating the same thing in everybody.
yeah. Well, I mean, that brings up one thought that I had immediately when you said that is that when we're trying to bring in these experiences of awe or love or whatever, they're not always automatically repeatable when we're just looking for something like that. Unless we have a practice like the one that you and I teach, we have one that we can create and it is repeatable. But generally speaking, you could have an experience of awe yesterday when you look at the sunset and it won't happen today. So yeah, it's not always repeatable. And yeah, there are different, shall we say, aspects or different experiences that people have with awe. One is that um, awe can be very expansive and transformative to myself, or in some people who might not be very grounded, they're using it or with purpose. They're using it to create something for themselves. I think of the whole idea of what's in the military called shock and awe.
Mm.
But we use that in the United States, we use that on the battlefield. We try to shock and awe the enemy so that they have this experience that there's a lot of power out there that I can't do anything about, and I feel helpless about that. And so I've lost my will to fight. And we see that in cults with a cult leader doing the same thing. And we may even experience that at work where we have a manager who's talking with awe-inspiring language and making his employees feel helpless and have to do exactly what they're told because they feel helpless in that whole aspect. So, yeah, awe can be destabilizing for people who don't have a good grounded approach and realize that it is transformative. And I have to kind of take that in.
It almost sounds like in those situations that the use of awe is, or they're aware of the awe situation and they're using it outside of themselves, but not really having the awe experience. Because as you were saying earlier, if they were, then they would become more connected or more
Yeah,
enlivened on the inside. So they're staying
right.
in a selfish place, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think there are the two parts to the experience of awe. One is that outer experience where, we're all human, and it kind of connects us to that humanity. But there's also then that need to reevaluate. I have just had this mind-bending experience, and now I need to reevaluate what I really thought life was, this limited thing, and now I'm seeing it's much bigger than I thought it was, and I have to take that in. And if we're not doing, I think, both of those, I think it's destabilizing.
Mm, that's awesome. And so there are certain people maybe naturally that are great at having the experience of awe. Um, but what if you're not? Then what?
Mhm. Well, there are some, and we just kind of talked about the two parts of that. One is that if I really have a real need to believe that life is this way and it's only this way, then it's going to prevent me from either even having an experience of awe, or if I have it, I'm not going to be able to utilize it correctly. So that is one of the important things about that. And then there are other ways that we can just promote having that more of that experience in our life. And one of those ways is to pay more attention to awe experiences in our life. We have those experiences. Do we even notice when we're having them? And if we're having more of those in nature or with music or with art, why not do more of that in a regular period of our life so that we're bringing more of that aspect into our life? Um, that's one of the things about religion. There are many ceremonies and rituals that are in religion, and that helps to promote awe as well. And then we look about the people around us, whether we see somebody doing good. And you talked about what we focus on grows. One of the things I've gotten into is some of those videos on YouTube of people helping other people.
Mm,
And so I get more and more of those where, that somebody just goes in and cleans somebody's house for them that's disabled and they're having problems keeping their house clean, or cleaning up their yard for them. And that transformation that occurs is so like Cinderella effect, and I always love that. So that's kind of fun. And then areas in our life where we're more curious, and so we're open to newer experiences, and we're not thinking that things have to be rich, and we're open then to having an awe experience. So all of those are possible ways to bring more awe into our life.
it's interesting that you're saying that that you kind of have to be in a place where you are receptive to change. I was just reading a book that's kind of about diet and how our American diet is kind of like, not that great. But if you are open and receptive to change, then you can slowly work into it. But her point was she was talking about meditative practices or even mindful
Mhm.
practices, and that
Mhm.
people can use them in the exact same way that you're talking about with awe, that they can just use it, but their whole intention is to stay small or control their world and keep it in a
Wow.
particular way rather than allow that uh,
Wow.
movement of awe. I'm thinking Holy
Hmm.
Spirit.
Hmm.
Obviously, I'm a
Exactly.
spiritual individual, so that's the
Uh-huh.
way that it moves or it inspires me. But like you were talking about Einstein, it's like the creativity,
Hmm.
the something outside of what we already know. And if we are um, purposefully limiting that, then that actually makes us sicker. It wouldn't even matter what we ate, we would end up sicker. And that sounds like something very similar to what we're talking about here with awe.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. That's a really powerful way to look at this, is that we can use anything in our life to keep us in our limited way of being. And that's a powerful part of our intellect, is wanting to create the same pattern over and over again, even if it makes no logical sense, I know, to think that we're keeping ourselves limited, that we're keeping ourselves in fear, and we're making those choices. And yet, that is part of what our personality structure is. There is a part of our personality structure that's designed to help keep us individual, or to allow us to find our unique personality. Let's put it that way, our uniqueness. And our society has blown that out of proportion, and we've now taken that into this being separate and being limited, and this is how I am and this is who I am, and I'm not willing to consider any other possibilities. And that's yeah, that's a really difficult thing to then bring awe into your life or even a meditative practice. And yet, we do know that somebody who does bring a meditative practice, we find that people who meditate or pray every day experience more awe just naturally. So yeah, it is a really powerful thing that that we can do. But again, we have to be willing to allow some of that mental structure to modify in order to assimilate or integrate our experiences.
Yeah, so that leads me to the point of where, as we've talked about, that we both teach the practice of the art of ascension, and that many people feel like, well, if I just learn it, then that's going to be good enough. And it may be that they may be like you talked about. There are
Hmm.
natural people that are naturals at
Hmm.
awe. They just go around
Hmm.
their life and they're being inspired by that, and it's
Hmm.
headed in the positive direction.
Yeah.
And with the art of ascension, it's that's a possibility to just learn it and then, go about your life. But then there's also all sorts of supportive programs that could help an individual kind of see where they're being locked up
Hmm.
in their own rigidity or their own thoughts, and help to break free of that. Because what happens so frequently, I would say, even in my own experience as I've traversed, but what I see in others as well is like they get attracted to particular practices and then it doesn't work, or
Seemingly.
attracted to an idea of a
Right.
diet change, but
Hmm.
it doesn't work. So, but really what's happening is they don't really want to change. And so as soon as the
Hmm.
first roadblock comes up, then they blame whatever it is that they're doing. I don't know if
Right.
that stimulates anything in you.
Well, I think it's kind of what we talked about before is there's the two aspects of that. There's that social aspect of it. And I think that I'll tell you in my own experience, I think that I went to a meeting every week after I learned my practice, and I got to see, even though I didn't think it was working inside of me, I could see it working inside of other people.
Mm.
And that was very awe-inspiring to me, and I'm like, "If it's happening to them, well, then maybe, it's," and then I could start to see what was going on and become a little more curious in myself about what's really going on. And that's the other aspect is being willing to open up and make a change within myself. And maybe it's just one small change, but just being willing to make some kind of a change. And there are just a lot of times where we just have a really hard and fast rule about, nope, this is the way I am. I can't be any other way. And this is the way life is. This is the way it works. And I'm not going to accept anything else. And if we're in that state, I don't know what can help us until but maybe enough awe experiences kind of accumulate and we're willing to give up the box a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and that essentially in the art of ascension, somebody doesn't have to start wide open, and they don't have to, be able having the experience of all the positive feelings. In fact, they can
Mhm.
experience a lot of negativity. So starting with that foundation is very powerful to get in
Very
there,
much.
utilize the meditative practice to help transform things at the foundational level,
Hmm.
and then, also realizing that there may be certain things that we were born with or that we came into this particular life that aren't what am I looking for, suiting us, or that's not the right word, but um serving us
Well,
anymore. And so the
right.
willingness to be able to see those things and are grasping onto them, are really just keeping us from the experiences that are really positive, of awe and love and gratitude
Absolutely.
and all of those things.
Absolutely. And what comes to my mind when you're saying that is even allowing yourself to be where you're at. And I think about when I taught in prison, and you think about people in prison, you think they're very entrenched in how they think life works. And some of my best students were very, very skeptical, but they allowed themselves to be very skeptical. And they were constantly, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And they were not only questioning me, but they were questioning inside of here in their experiences. And they were like, what's really happening now? And that curiosity and that skepticism served them so much. And think about it. I mean, I look back at my own religious upbringing, skepticism was really not allowed.
Mhm.
And it's, I might go, that's not good. And if you will really allow that, what might really happen with that sort of thing. So if you're just even where you're at, that can be very powerful to assist you in opening up.
Yeah, great point. Thank you. So I don't know if you have anything else that you'd want to share considering awe. I'm guessing that you'll probably have things like this on your website that people could go and explore some more, or they could reach out to you and have a conversation with you.
Well, actually, I do have an article that was just published in a new e-zine, the Art of the Ascension in the World e-zine, which is available on Etsy. And I have an article talking about awe and the benefits of awe. So that's one place one can look. But yes, at my website and YouTube channel, Shining Light on Life, I have a number of different emotional topics. I don't know that I have awe out there yet because the research is fairly new in being publicized. So it's great to be available now.
That's awesome. And I'll put those links in the video below so it's easy for viewers to find those things and explore some more about awe. And like I said, to reach out to Jyoti or myself if you have any other questions or you want to just explore the concepts further. Of
Mm.
course, you can always leave comments below in the on the YouTube videos, and then other people can benefit from the questions or thoughts that you have as well.
Absolutely. About anybody can call me at any time. They can check my website for schedule of courses. I try to publicize all the courses that I'm on my website having available, whether they're the beginning level or whether they're at somebody who's already learned and who are wanting to further their practice and expand consciousness. That's really what all of this is about.
That's expanding conscious awareness, regardless of where you're starting, just to begin
Exactly.
to increase that, and with that, the all of those positive, uplifting, emotions where you want to live life.
Exactly. Exactly. Take life out of that little tiny box and expand into more. That's really what expanding consciousness is about, is just expanding into more and more and more. We're infinite creatures and we have put a lot of limitations on ourselves.
Well, thank you for coming on, and um, I hope to have you back again with a different
Yeah.
topic because I find all of these very, very interesting.
I always enjoy talking to you, Shivani. It's always great.